morning and welcome back to another episode of the LEGO Legend of Zelda Custom Set Showcase Wave 4, where today we're going to be taking a look at another custom set, this one being a castle expansion from Breath of the Wild. Z0060 with 492 pieces. This is the Lockup Breakout with a questionable STALNOX book that I'm going to explain in a second. No jumping to conclusions today. But taking a closer look, here's of course our box art for Z060 Lockup Breakout for ages 8 and up with 492 pieces, retailing for £44.99 Great British pounds with 3 figures and 1 brick built character. And as you can see, this is supposed to be a castle expansion, meaning it can connect to stuff like Z024, the Hyrule Castle Sanctum, Z027, the Wall expansion, and Z003 something, the Castle Gatehouse, or I should say entranceway. But reading our little description to explain a little bit more about this custom set, expand your fortification with the latest addition to Hyrule Castle, the Lockup Breakout. Explore the spooky castle interior to find valuable treasure or defend the wall from the terrors of the night. Lock up prisoners and feed the beastly STALNOX from the winch. Oh no, the prisoners are escaping through the hole in the wall. Only you can stop the castle from falling. And that is it. It is another piece of variation to add to your castle, but beyond that it has an interesting interior to take a look at, and of course it's a prison set, the first one we've done in this reality, so of course there's going to be a breakout feature. We've also got some interesting new variants of characters to take a look at, as well as some interesting discrepancies and decisions that I've made as this set's been through a fairly long development window. But opening up a box, we'll see that we have 4 numbered bags and 2 instruction manuals. Inside that first instruction manual, we will see that bag 1 gives us our well-worn Link figure, as well as builds up our STALNOX. And then bag 2, of course, is going to deal with the castle. Bag 2 does our STALNOX and a section of wall. And then bag 3 builds up a little bit more wall in a new section. And then bag 4 builds up the fortification on top, as well as giving us our Stal Koblin. Now, taking a look at the whole build, of course, this splits into multiple sections. You can see that there are actually different parts that connect together in different ways. And then, of course, the STALNOX is a little separate thing, and we're going to take a look at him first. Okay, first things first, scale. This guy is designed to be large to a figure, but not accurate. Obviously, we've already done a Hinox on the channel, and he was much, much bigger. This guy is supposed to be able to hide behind the wall. He's supposed to be in a MIDI scale, which explains why his proportions are a little bit funny. Now, secondly, you try replicating bones at this scale. It's really, really difficult. So I've tried my best. He's actually based off the same design that appeared in the larger version of the Lockup in the big castle, except for obviously the big castle's pre-calamity, so he's actually just a red on it in here. But this is the same kind of scale, same kind of design, just shrunken down and bona fide. So let me know what you think of him, of course, but we're going to take a look at his details. One last thing I want to mention is the fact that compared to the other style creatures, his colour scheme is reversed, where the accents are tan instead of the body being tan. And although he looks more tan in the game, he does not look very good as a tan figure. If you guys don't have much fondness for him, we will have a play around with him in a future video and see what we can change. But at the moment I quite like how it's done, although I understand that it's got its limitations and most of those are down to scale. But let's see what this guy can do. If we look up close, of course, you've got his eye, which you could easily pop off and bounce around. It's just a sticker on a 2x2 round tile. You've got an imitation of what would be nostril cavities, as well as a lower jaw with teeth that doesn't move. His head, of course, is actually on a piece so that you can tilt it side to side to give him a little bit of curiosity when he's thinking of who he's going to stomp on. His rib cages are made using dark black pieces to highlight the gaps between them, as well as he's got a little bit of waist articulation, although not very much. You can also see if I lift his arm up of the way, not only does his arm have articulation, but there is a little bit of shaping. You've actually got these tan horns to represent some rib curvature, as well as some wedge slopes to just show maybe a little bit more depth to his rib cage. And then taking a look at his arms, you can see how they're built here, as well as that they can fold backwards and forwards out of the way, and he's got some little teeth to represent, well, a basic representation of fingers. Down at the legs, of course, there's a little bit of leg articulation. It's built basically off some flat places. You've got the toenails, of course, iconic to any STALNOX. And of course, this guy is supposed to be in the Lockup because he'll be guarding the Hylian Shield. He's a really iconic part of the Lockup, in fact, one of the most iconic locations other than the Sanctum in the Breath of the Wild castle. Which is why it's been turned into a set here. And here you can see my representation of it. Obviously, from the outside, the Lockup is actually just a giant rock cliff with walls on top of it. And what I wanted to replicate by turning this into a set is that mixed variation and landscaping that comes into the castle. Obviously we've already put the sanctum on a rocky base. I wanted to add more variation to the fact that this is a castle built on a cliff, and we've already done a straight wall segment that has the ability to bend, right? There's just a tower, so I thought now was the perfect opportunity to do another variation of this, where it's like up on a cliff but also down below, and I think it adds a nice height differential in structure where for an area that otherwise wouldn't be very unique. Like the Lockup is very much an interior location, it's not really got an exterior presence. Here from the other angle, of course, you can just see how it looks from the other side, and down at the bottom, of course, you'll notice that there are connection points on either end to allow you to attach to other castle segments. You can also see here on the first section that this little indent in the wall is supposed to represent one of the cave entrances inside like the mountain, and that is done here with some archway pieces. However, we've also got a ladder which leads up to the battlements. That's the first battlement access I provided in any of the sets so far. And you can see that that just jauntily does up, and it's easily removable, so if it clashes with other sections that you're putting next to it, you can always like take it out or whatever, and that's nice and simple. As I mentioned, there's also the entrance to the underground, which has got two torches on one side, and then like an imitation of the wooden beams which hold up the doorway above it. You've also got a cobweb with a spider, which can actually like be pushed out the way, just a little bit of an extra play feature there as you move into the interior. From the outside, you can see we like the other sets, we've also got some leaves down the bottom as well as a little bit of rock work, and this suspicious looking grate in the wall, which doesn't actually take much inspiration from anywhere in the castle, although in the actual prison cells of a Lockup you can see grates like this, and unsurprisingly to anyone, you can flick this out with your finger so that people can either like infiltrate the castle or the prisoners could escape, and there's actually a second escape feature that we'll take a look at later on. Up on the top balcony for this first section, you can see we've got a crate with some spare ammunition and then a stud shooter, which is representing a different type of wall defence. We've already had a ballista before from the rooftops, however here we have a smaller crossbow, I guess, but represented with a stud shooter. And nowadays in modern sets, this obviously not since this was designed, this could just be replaced by including the bow piece from the Avatar sets, as with a lot of these things. But in this case, I chose to use the old stud shooter design with a projectile that, of course, can shoot out when you push down, and it wouldn't go very far. It's a bit of an awkward projectile design, as you can see here, but you get 3 of them in the set, and it's just an extra thing to mess around with, to shoot off the Stalfos and so on. So here is the second section with the height variation, as we mentioned, and this one's largely based off the big ugly rock pieces that we get on front. And on the interior, you can see that this is the actual prison section, as well as with a very small representation of a guard's room and a couple of details. Taking a look at how it actually connects to the other module, you can see the cobweb over to the right, and you can see you've got this angled piece. This one's angled by default, right? You can't actually straighten this wall segment out, where there's this little bit of negative space for a feature that we'll come back to, as well as a bucket on the floor for maybe prison duty or for like mopping the hard stone corridors. Just a little bit of an ominous detail. On top of the wall, you've got a crossbow that doesn't fire. Again, could be replaced by the bow in the future one, or even the other crossbow piece which does shoot, but it's just sat here. You know, we don't really see any weaponry on the castle walls facing outwards, so it's nice to include something so they could defend themselves. And then here is the other feature. So this wall segment here, of course, naturally can explode by pressing down on this lever to shove it outwards so that it like flows outwards, and then will result in you can either escape or once again get in. You can also see a variety of foliage such as the 3-pointed leaves, the olive green fern, and then actually just off to the right you can see the biological tentacle in dark green that's curly. And as I mentioned, this is based off big ugly rock pieces. It's the corner one and the straight one next to each other with some slopes to help disguise it, but just builds up a nice negative space on the inside, which is for the important detail. Up on top, of course, is built this facade of a wall section. Right on the top, you can see there's a treasure chest. There's also a window below, and of course, this treasure chest could include anything from ammunition to rupees to the Hylian shield. It's the only treasure chest in the set. Down in the guards room, which is up above the big ugly rock pieces, you've got a candle on the wall as well as some handcuffs to be put on some prisoners. You've got a little container as well as a saucepan, which could be for like giving grub or like slimy food to the prisoners, depending if they're human or monster. Of course, you've got this little winch on the wall, which we'll come back to, a spider, and then an axe as well, which I suppose is a weapon for any guard, or maybe it's a confiscated weapon from the prisoner. And I mentioned the winch, and that is actually attached to a piece of string which you can't see here, and is dangling a turkey leg which you can lower down to feed the prisoners or the STALNOX if you want to have him in here and pretend that any negative space behind here is in fact like the big STALNOX room. But you can see there are a couple more details on the ground floor. Here's that bucket that I mentioned earlier, but looking down you've got 3 jail cells, a little torch on the wall, obviously a hole in the ceiling for the chicken to come down on, and then actually you've got a bone on the floor as well, either the remains of a prisoner or an unfortunate guard. Taking a look behind the doors, you'll notice something glowing. That is a technique that was used in the Harry Potter sets to represent, I don't know, something that glows in the dark, some fungus, or maybe even some fecal matter. I really don't know. Either way, it's just some glow-in-the-dark 1x1 trans studs, and then if you open the doors you can see those more clearly. Another little bone hidden in the back of one, and then a piece of poo in the middle one. And the other one's empty because of course you want to actually be able to stick figures in here, so this would fit not only the 2 enemies you get in this set, but also any other characters from other sets that you might have, or maybe even some rogue guards, right? Like if the castle was taken over by monsters, you could put like Hyrule guards in here, you could put Link in here, right? The king, the princess, anyone you like, of course. Also other enemies that we've seen across the series, the minifigure Moblin would fit in here, the alive Bokoblin, this is Alphos, any figure would fit in these cages, and the one on the right's a bit bigger, so even tail pieces and so on should fit as well. And that's going to be it for the build for the 8th of the sets that we've done in the wave. You can see it here with the rest of the lineup. That's really filling out now. But of course we've got figures, and of course we've got to combine this with the rest of the castle, so stick around. First figure is of course Link in the well-worn outfit. Now this was an interesting choice for me to do. I chose to do the well-worn trousers along with the well-worn shirt that you get out of Shrine of Resurrection, as well as giving me a torch and a pot lid. I chose to not include these shoes on the figure just to add a little bit more contrast and make it look a little bit more worn, and you can see that just like in the game, his shirt is just a little bit too short. He's got a newer facial expression actually, with some scratches and a more determined expression, and the same hairpiece he's been having for years at this point. Talking specifically about his weapons though, as we've been doing a lot with Wave 4, this really is the accessories wave. You can see here that the pot lid is just printed pattern on a shield piece. I think it's an iconic but stupid weapon from the game, and reminds me of something that an early game Link might stumble into this area, of course, to try and get the Hylian shield. Next up, of course, we have the Stalfos, which is reusing the Stalfos headpiece, but recoloured into tan. Now, you may notice, obviously, that Stalfos in game don't actually have the metal protrusions out the back of their head. However, because they wouldn't make a different mould for this, I tried to make them look as natural to the bony implements as possible, including the holes where the metal is usually attached to. So it's a compromise, right? Like, it still looks recognisable. However, we've just got to try and hide those imperfections as best as possible. We've just got to stick to one mould. There's no other way around it. The horn's still sticking out the front as normal, however that's going to be changing soon because I'm actually redoing this mould for a future set next month, which is basically going to retcon and exist that this head mould is actually 2 parts where the horn is a separate element. You've got the tail coming down the back as usual, just again recoloured into tan, and then he's actually built like a normal skeleton, so you've got 2 skeleton legs, a skeleton body and 2 skeleton arms. No weapon, as he's a basic level style enemy. Next up is the Stalkoblin, again using another recolour of the existing Stalkoblin head. Again, this head's going to be updated or subseded in a couple of months. You've also got the basic body, however this time using longer arms so that he can hold the classic bow piece. Again, could be the avatar piece, if depending on how they want to use that in the future. But that's here because I find that Stalkoblins often have an archer among their groups. He's got the eyes, this crazy little expression, a little bit of printing on the top of their head to make him a little bit more unique, right? Actually, this mould, never mind, is unique. No ears. I couldn't get away with keeping the ears on him, so I thought that producing a one-off mould for this set, if anything, it should be this one because the Lizalfos looks perfectly fine with the head protrusions, in my opinion. Next up is, of course, the last figure is the STALNOX, and it stands out more clearly than ever that the colour is wrong. We'll see what you guys think. Let's leave it at that. But I've already talked about his design at length. Here he is next to the reference material where he clearly should be tan, and his eye should also be a different colour. However, let me know what you guys think. We'll leave it at that for now. He's a difficult thing to do at this scale. Make him any rounder and he starts to look a little bit weird, and also bricks don't like to be round, they're square after all. But I think I've done an alright job given the scale and the circumstances, but we'll leave that one down to you. More importantly though, here is the castle. Now we've added a new wall segment. Obviously you can see the improved sanctum in the back. You've got the gatehouse at the front, and any of these blue towers around the outside is of course 27, which is the castle wall segment. And you've got the Egerton attacks castle townhouses in the front. But taking a closer look or a look from above, you can see I've added One little wall protrusion in the middle, because obviously the castle is a layered fortress. This is something we'll see develop with the next Hyrule Castle expansion in the next wave, where there's going to be lots more interior walls, and I'm actually going to redo this design from scratch. However, for today, I just inserted the new thing into the wall. One thing to talk about here is, as you're an adult, when you buy multiple ones of these sets, presumably, I've included the idea that you could mirror the set, like as in like build it in a mirrored form. I've made sure that that's possible, so that you could actually display like a wall spinner that goes up for longer and then comes back down, right? Just to give you some little bit more variation in how you want to display it. It is definitely an option. I made sure that it was possible, and that creates this really nice segment that we have here around the back. It also just adds so much variation to the wall, right? Like here you can see another one in between the gatehouse and actually just a wall turret over on the right, and you can see the sanctum holding in the back. I just think it makes it look so much better, right? Like it just adds so much more depth. And as I mentioned, this is the 4th set to be added to the castle lineup. That's 2 in wave 2, 1 in wave 3 and 1 in wave 4. There is definitely one more at least coming. I think 2 more, although I just don't know how the last one's going to look yet, but that's not this wave, that's in the long distant future, so a little bit more to wait. But I actually wanted to say I really love the box art for this one. It seems random, but the box art's really doing it for me this time. I really like how it's turned out. And a couple more things to mention, of course. This is our 8th Lizalfos variant, the Stalfos. All 7 of these being Breath of the Wild variants, apart from the Dark Lizalfos down in the bottom right corner from Skyward Sword. But I like the way it looks. They're cool together. I like this as an image. We've got a couple more still to do. And here, of course, adding to the Boko lineup, the Boko lineup's really expanded this wave again. This is yet another one for the Breath of the Wild collection, meaning 5 Bokos for Breath of the Wild, and then 2 from Skyward Sword at this point. However, they're not really present in many other 3D games. I suppose they're around, but they're just not a big deal. And then, of course, yeah, just finishing off here nicely by taking one last look at the box art, which I really like the green and grey contrast with the bright colours. It feels pretty colourful actually, compared to some of my boxes, so I'm really pleased with how this one turned out. Let me know what you thought of the latest castle expansion, how it adds to the castle, and of course your thoughts on the controversial enemy colour. I've hinted at a couple of things today, of course, for wave 5, but also about the head molds of these guys, and it's going to be changing, so big tease there for a new mold and a new plan, right? Like, it's going to look very similar, but it's going to serve a different purpose, and you will see why, right? Like, it all will become clear very soon, I promise. So stick around to see what's coming next. There's at least 1 more classic custom coming before Tears of the Kingdom, as well as 2 trailer themed Tears of the Kingdom customs, and a whole heap of videos. But just in general, let me know what you thought down below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next week.